welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sarah. Today I wanted to film a video on how to make the best cinnamon rolls ever. I make this recipe every single time and it's always been a hit. So we have family coming over tonight and I figured, I'm like, maybe after dinner let's have something sweet. It might snow. Well, there's literally nothing better than cinnamon rolls. So this is like fairly easy, but it does take a long time. I think it takes about like 2 to 2.5 hours in total. A lot of it just really depends on how quick your dough rises. And yeah, but besides that, it's super easy, it's super yummy, and I hope you guys enjoy. So this is all the ingredients that you will need to make this recipe. I will also link the recipe in the description. The first thing that you will need is milk. Now I like to use warm milk and we will need about 3/4 of a cup. We will warm that up around like maybe 105 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit if you have a thermometer. If not, just until it's warm to the touch, that would work as well. The other thing you will need is some active dry yeast. You'll need 2 1/4 teaspoons. The other thing you are going to need is 2 eggs that are room temperature. You'll use 1 egg and then you'll use the egg yolk on the other one. You're also going to need some butter. So throughout the whole recipe, for the dough, you're going to use 1/4 cup of melted butter. For the filling, you're going to use about 5 tablespoons of butter. And then for the icing, you're going to use about 6 tablespoons of butter. And then you'll need about 3/4 of a teaspoon of a good salt. And then you'll also need 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. And then the last but not least is you will need about 3 cups of bread flour. That is what you will need for the dough. For the filling in the cinnamon roll, you're gonna need some dark brown sugar. I prefer the dark brown sugar compared to the light. I feel like it adds way more of a flavor than the light does. You'll need about 2/3 of a cup of that dark brown sugar. And then you're gonna need about 2 tablespoons of this ground cinnamon. For the frosting or icing, whatever you wanna call it, you're going to need some vanilla extract. So we're gonna need about 1/2 teaspoon of that vanilla extract. We're also going to use 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. We're going to use about 6 tablespoons of butter. Also, again, make sure is at room temperature. And then we're going to need some cream cheese. And that is all the ingredients that we will be using. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start with is with the 3/4 cups of warm milk. So we are going to warm that up right away. I'm just gonna get my hair clipped. Make sure your hands are nice and clean and your surfaces are clean before you start. All right, so now that we have our milk in there, we're gonna do 2/4 of a teaspoon of active dry yeast. And then just give it a good little whisk. And then we're just gonna let it proof for maybe 5 to 8 minutes until you start seeing it become cloudy. That's when you know it's ready. So now that your active yeast looks like this, it's a little cloudy and spongy, we're gonna get started on melting some butter. So you're gonna need about 1/4 cup or 4 tablespoons of butter. Now you can also just put it in the microwave, melt it that way, or use the same pan that where you use the milk and melt it that way as well. In the meantime, while our butter is melting, we're gonna incorporate the rest of the ingredients. So we're gonna add our 1/4 cup of sugar, about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I accidentally dropped all of my salt before this video, so I'm using sea salt. I'm hoping it's fine, but we'll see. And then we're gonna do 1 egg and then 1 egg yolk. These have to be at room temperature. Not the shell, just the egg. And then we're gonna incorporate our melted butter. Whisk that all together until everything is incorporated, all the eggs are broken down. Awesome. And then we can start adding our bread flour. So we're a little empty here. Now I am going to add 2.5 cups first. The reason why you don't wanna add, with any single recipe that you ever wanna try, don't add what it says. Add little by little. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that when you are dipping your cup into the flour, you don't want to pack it in there just with a knife. You want to scrape it from the top and there's your cup. So for example, like this, you don't want to pack it, just slide it, and then you add it. So there's 1, okay, 2, wow, is this gonna be like perfect amount or what? And then 2.5. Now you can use a wooden spoon, or you can just use your hands and mix it all around, incorporate it. It's still super sticky, it's sticking to our fingers. We're gonna add little by little. Dust the top, and then just keep mixing it around. Okay, so still sticking to my fingers, but you see how the dough is kind of forming into a little ball here? So I'll get my other bread flour. Now I'm gonna lightly dust the countertop, and then I will dump my dough there. We're gonna start kneading. After you dust your counter, dust a little bit of the top. You have the dough sticking to your counter like this, means you need a little more flour. And you want to knead for about 5 to 8 minutes until your dough is nice and soft, and also until you get that little bounce back. If you are coming here from my previous video on how to make bread, I taught you how to knead your dough, but if you are new here, we are going to teach you how to knead. So what you're gonna do is bring it back to you, push it down with the palm. So you bring it back, push it down. You can use 2 hands where you're pushing with both, or you can use 1 hand to rotate it, 1 hand to knead, whichever is easier for you. At this point, you shouldn't have that much dough sticking onto your hand. If you still do, you need a little bit of flour, but make sure you don't add that much. All right, we have our little ball here. How you know your dough is ready is when you poke it, you get that bounce back right away. And if it's still sticking too much to your hands, needs a little more flour. If it's sticking slightly, it should be fine. In a nice clean bowl, I just washed mine to avoid piling up dishes. We're just gonna put some oil, lightly cover your bowl, and then throw your dough in there. And then also spin it around. Make sure you coat your dough in a little bit of oil. I added a little too much, so way less than this. You can either use some saran wrap, or you can use a little cloth to cover it up. I like using saran wrap because I feel like that really traps in a little bit of the heat in there, and it makes it rise a little quicker. And then you want to put this in a warm area of your house. The warmer it is, the quicker it will rise. The colder it is, the longer it will take. This for me, usually when I leave it in a warm area, it takes about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm gonna go put it in our sunny side of the house and then just let it rise. Okay, so since our dough is almost done rising, we're gonna start making the filling. For our filling, again, we're gonna need some dark brown sugar, about 2/3 of a cup or 10 to 11 tablespoons. And then your cinnamon, and then 2.5 tablespoons of butter. Make sure it's room temperature because we are going to have to spread it throughout our dough. So let's get it started. And it should look just like this. Pretty soft, everything blended together. Now, if you don't really like cinnamon, I would say only add about 2 tablespoons. If you really like that cinnamon taste, I say add 3. It just really depends on your own taste buds. Now that the filling is complete, we are gonna take out our lovely dough. Save the saran wrap because you're still gonna need it. Lightly dust the surface that you're gonna be working on. Slightly, just a tad bit, dust your dough, and then dust your rolling pin. Okay, and then just start rolling it out, making a rectangular shape. Okay, and now that you kind of have your little rectangular shape, you're gonna start by applying your butter. Your butter is all nicely and evenly spread. We're gonna start dusting the cinnamon and brown sugar mixture. So you really want to push it into the butter and then into the dough as well. Now that our filling is nicely and evenly spread out, we're gonna start rolling this. You wanna make sure it's not too tight, just because when it is too tight, the center will pop out. Learned my lesson quite a few times. Kind of push it in from the sides, make it a little chunky, and then chop off the end, because that's gonna be the most imperfect area there. Start cutting your cinnamon rolls about 1 inch. You should be getting about 8 to 10 little pieces of cinnamon roll, just depends on how small you cut them. You do want to use like a 9x9 squared baking pan. I left mine at Trevor's grandma's house because we were taking her some cinnamon rolls while we announced our gender. So we're going to be using a round one, which still works. Make sure you spray that really good with some non-stick spray, and then just start putting your cinnamon rolls in there. And that is what they should look like in your pan. We are going to cover them one more time. Let them rise about 30 minutes to an hour. Always depends on how cold or warm your house is. And then after that, we'll pop them in the oven. Once your stove is preheated to 350 degrees and your cinnamon rolls are looking like this, a nice full pan, we are going to put a little bit of heavy whipping cream. You can use 1/4 cup. This will make the cinnamon rolls really moist. Awesome. And then after that, we will pop it in the oven for about 22 minutes. Now, it can range from 20 to 25. It really depends on your stove. I found the sweet spot at 22 minutes. Since we only have about 10 minutes left on our cinnamon rolls, I'm gonna start by making the icing or frosting. And we're gonna start by adding 6 tablespoons of softened butter. And then we're gonna add 2 ounces of cream cheese. And then we're quickly going to cream that all together. Put the little whisk attachment. After it's all creamed together, we are going to add 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons of milk, and then 1/2 teaspoon of your favorite vanilla extract. And then whisk that really slowly, or else it's gonna make a mess, until it's all incorporated. Then we can crank up the speed. Now let's let them cool for about 5 minutes before applying the icing. And that is how I make my homemade cinnamon rolls. I hope you guys try this, and if you do, let me know. If you change anything, let me know. If you did something different and it made it taste a lot better, let me know. I'm always here to learn. Anywho, I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video, and I will catch you guys on my next one.